that's the way you could do it, because you have to play this game. It's like people are like, oh, I'm afraid of doing this, it's a risk. I usually joke with people saying that the worst case scenario for you is you today. That is the worst case scenario, because you don't have anything, right? So it's like regular people, they always worry to do the deal, but the worst case scenario is you, like you already don't have anything. So it's like if you bought the home and lost it, you're just back to you.
Vince, thank you for joining me for our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host, Matt Camp, over here at DealMachine. And on these, we really like to shine a spotlight on industry experts like yourself. Really hear your inspiring stories and educate our audience on how you see the real estate industry evolving. So, really excited to welcome on today Vince Rodriguez. Your mechanical engineering background, super interesting. Love to hear how that applies into real estate. You've got, which I know you started in real estate in 2018. You're managing partner over at Envy Holdings right now, and you guys have over 30 doors across three cities. It sounded like mostly duplexes and triplexes, and then on top of all that, you're also the host of the RE Social podcast. So you got busy schedule, man. Appreciate you taking some time out for us.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on. It was a nice hanging out with you at BPCon in San Diego.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a good time. So, yeah, can you maybe, I know I read a little bit about your background, but could you maybe tell our audience a little bit more about kind of how you got into real estate, your first deal, just your whole journey, leading up to where you are right now?
Yeah, man, for sure. So I read the book, obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad, in 2018 in January, and I immediately got really depressed that I wasted my entire life because I was 32 at that point. And then I spent the next 6 months reading pretty much all of the books on real estate. Like I actually read, I think, most of the books available. And then it took me about 6 months, and then I was confident enough to buy the first triplex where I had saved up 20 grand, my buddy had 20 grand, and then my sister had 20 grand. So we put it down on a down payment on a triplex in 2018, and everything went wrong for the next 9 months. So that was my start with real estate.
Yeah. Well, so when you say everything went wrong, can you dig into that a little bit? Like, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, so first of all, straight up, I ran all the numbers since I'm an engineer, like you mentioned. I'm very good with analytical stuff, but I forgot that you got to buy in nice areas, right? So this area was not the best. So people were not paying rent. They were doing drugs. They were stealing electricity, squatting, all that stuff. So it took me about 9 months of a lot of work and almost giving up to actually turn that property around. I recently sold that property for about like a six-figure profit, though.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
What market was it in, too, you said?
That's in Kern County, Bakersfield in California.
Wow. So do
Yeah.
you feel? I know you mentioned the engineering background there, and is that something like? How do you feel that prepared you for real estate at all? Like, do you think much of that it really applied, in terms of how you're using it today, or?
Yeah. So, I like education. I have a master's in mechanical engineering. It's a different path. You could make six figures and do things, but it's not really going to buy your financial freedom quickly. But I could definitely be a millionaire if I work for 30, 40 years and put money in my 401k and stuff like that. That's for sure. But if you want something faster, sooner and stuff, you definitely want to go the entrepreneur route. So, your question about how engineering helps me with real estate investing, I would say it makes my analytical skills very key, right? So the numbers that I see with real estate is so primitive, like it's like high school or even middle school. So it's like, okay, well, this is not hard at all. Those things help a lot. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, we definitely have people who have all kinds of different backgrounds and education and degree levels and things like that listening to this. I mean, on the one other thing that kind of stood out in your background that I know you've talked about on other podcasts before is you had like door to door sales experience, right?
Yeah, that's yeah. I actually sold door to door books on my first two summer. You know who else has sold door to door books for the same company is Vinny Chopra. I don't know if you know about him.
Huh.
He's
No.
he has over $1 billion of real estate. So
Wow. There you go,
I've
man.
talked to him too. Yeah. So I worked for Thomas Nelson Publications. So we sold Bibles and Black History books and
Yeah.
homework handbooks to people in the South.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, there are quite a few people who have been on this, this podcast and like on our channels and stuff who have that kind of like door to door sales background. I feel like do you feel like that really applied well to getting into the real estate game? Or
It definitely kind of like takes you out of your shell because I'm from India, right? And I came to Kansas. I did my schooling, so it's a big culture difference. But I like different cultures. I like different things to do. I don't want to be stuck in a box. I don't want to be married when I'm 22. So I try different things. So the most insane thing that I could do in life would be is to move across the literally the world and then go to Kansas and then go to school and then say during summer I'm going to sell books door to door to Americans. That would be the most insane thing I could do. And I did it and I was pretty good at it. But I learned a lot about myself too. So it's like
yeah,
I'm more like I'll do very well and then I'll be like very sad and then I'll do very well. So those kind of things you can work out when you're young. So you know that things about yourself because cold approach is a hard thing to do. Literally, people will slam the door on your face every single day for 2 months straight, right? And that's if you can kind of go through that process of learning, that actually really builds like character. Like I don't get angry as much. I'm more calm, those kind of stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's quite a like you said, it's quite a jump and a culture shift of like saying, "Hey, I'm going to go do this thing that's so extremely different from than what I grew up with or what I'm used to."
Hmm.
If you're somebody young watching this too, do you recommend them like trying to take experiences like that and get out, get out of their sense of normalcy? Or
Yeah, I mean, I would, yeah, I would talk to strangers, meet people, and then it's like just talking to a girl. Like, like can you talk to a girl who's walking in the park, or like it's very hard. Like even if you're out in the bar, right? Like you tend to stick with your friends and hang out with your friends because it's more comfortable. But if it's more comfortable, you're not going to grow. You're not going to meet that whatever dream girl or like or the client that you want. So if you go to a meetup, for example, I have my own meetup. It's called Audi Social Meetup in Orange County, and it's very easy for me to talk to people because I have been rejected so many times. It doesn't matter. Like people can just say anything. I don't. It doesn't bother you as much.
for sure, yeah. I mean, I think anything that's gonna, force you to get out of your comfort zone and go do stuff, especially the door to door stuff. That's really really tough. Like, I mean, I did growing up, I did like a couple like fundraisers and things like that, where it'd be like knocking door to door, and I think even little things like that through school. I mean, that gets you just used to trying to build a relationship with somebody you just met and interrupted their day. So
I mean,
um,
Matt, you're doing this right now, right? I mean, you work for DealMachine and you talk to me at a bigger pocket, so you already know the game. So you've been doing it every day. So for you, it'll be very easy to go to someone and do a deal or talk to someone because you have so much experience getting rejected and people like, I don't want this, this is a scam, whatever.
that is true. Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
So one thing I love that to hear you talk about, in generals, I know you're a bit of a, you said you're a bit of a nerd in terms of like studying the Fed and monetary policy and macroeconomics and like that, the whole finance world. Can you maybe tell our audience a little bit of, how you see things evolving, how you're changing your strategy, just kind of current market conditions? I know obviously it's a very broad, brush, that you can, there, but would love to hear your thoughts on how you see the real estate industry right now.
Yeah, man, that's a very good question. I hope this will be useful for people like young kids and stuff because my podcast is geared towards younger audience too, people trying to get in or a little bit more advanced who want to know more. So how this journey started for me was I'm very curious personality. I always want to know like, oh, how does this thing work? That's why I'm an engineer. So now I wanted to I'm getting bored of doing these single family or duplex whatever, right? So I want to know more so I can make better decisions. So I started my podcast this year and I started hitting all the big names. So, like, last episode was Neil Baba. I had him on, Kathy Fedke, Terrence Doyle, all the big dogs, right? So, what I learned from talking to these people is for one, they are way, way smarter than me. Right. So now if I have a 1 hour conversation with them, I'm getting like way smarter because they're just so much more brilliant, right? Because they have so much experience. So I tend to pick up things those people say, and then I try to use it in my life, and I research more. So one of the things Kathy was talking about was, Kathy Fedke, right, with Real
Mhm.
Wealth, and she
Yeah.
has a radio show and stuff. Yeah,
Mhm.
she's Malibu. She's great. And she said, the Feds are starting to do something called, quantitative tightening. They're going to start tightening. They're going to start increase the interest rate because the inflation is getting out of control. What this does is it's going to pull capital from equity from the markets, and then everything's going to tighten down. So when that happens, the asset prices will shrink eventually because there's not a lot of money to go out there, right? So I started selling off my assets at the top of the market because I believe like what these guys were saying, and I did a lot of research. So like my worst three properties, if I had them now, I would be in a little bit of a trouble. I sold them at the peak of the market, and I'm continuing to sell these while we get off, and then I'm exchanging them into nicer properties, right? So I didn't have this kind of knowledge before. Before I thought, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to hold it till I die, right? But that's not really how real estate works. At some point, you would want to exchange them into a nicer asset, because I don't want to manage a triplex for $250,000 and deal with all these tenants and stuff. It's not really a good use of my time. It's better off for me to start moving to Inland Empire, and I live in Orange County, so I'm now buying in Orange County. But I couldn't start in Orange County with just $40,000, right? It's
Right.
everything is $1 million here, so
Yeah.
so these kind of things I like to tell people is, if you understand things beyond just the micro aspect, like, oh, I know this house brings this much money, you're always going to be confused or scared if you want to make like bigger moves, right? But if you understand what the Feds are doing, who are even the Feds? They're not a government agency. They're not a bank. So they literally can print money and control money like monetary policy. So they're central planners. So they can plan. They're trying to make the economy go down because there's too much activity, right?
Mhm.
So if you understand these things, you understand the market is going to go down maybe another 10% in the next 3 to 6 months, right? And then what will happen is, if the economy crashes, or if it goes down more than what they want, and then inflation calms down, they're going to start printing again. Because once the world figured out that you can actually print your way out of trouble in the short term, it's very hard for them not to do that, because the cycles, the elections, everything is 2 to 4 years, right? You can
Mhm.
always push the can down the road. So once you understand all these things, you can kind of start making better decisions. So that's kind of like primarily what I do, because I have a business partner, Andrew. He's my best friend. That's the on, and then I'm the V, right? On V. So he kind of takes over management and operations, and I kind of do like the bigger picture, capital, podcast, these kind of things. So
Nice.
it works out for us.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, there's a lot of people who are listening to this that I would think are thinking about doing that first deal, but maybe are hesitant on, knowing when to buy, or when, trying to time the market. Like, how would you really, how would you answer that for them? Like, how would you kind of, what would you tell them if they're thinking about doing that first deal?
Yeah, I'll answer it like one of my biggest, guys I look up to is Neil Bawa. I had him on my
Yeah.
podcast last week. He said, one should always try to time the market to the best of their abilities, right? Like, it should always, like, if Monday is going to be better than Thursday, buy it on Monday, right? Like, it is. But if you're going to say 2029 is going to be the best year to buy real estate, then you're a moron, right? Because you just wasted a decade, right? That's not going to work. So the cliche is like, time in the market's always better than timing the market. That's what they always say, right? But it's true. But right now we are in a very interesting positions, because the market's going down because the interest rates are high and people can't afford it. So they literally doubled from 3% to over 7% now. So the asset prices are going to fall, right? So
Mhm.
at this point, if you're going to buy a single family home, I would say, you might want to wait. It's going to go down a little bit. But if you're buying cash producing investments, assets, or you're going to rent the room out and you can make the mortgage and stuff, you can always refinance if the interest rates are high. You're only looking for one day for the interest rates to be lower in the next 30 years for you to refinance. There's no prepayment penalty if you do residential Fannie Freddie agency debt, right? So those kind of things, if you can work all of those things out, it's the decision you're making is not that hard. But for newcomers, if your question is directed towards newcomers, I would say definitely partner with someone. This is a pretty, it's kind of, you'll be scared to make a move. I'm buying right now. I have a property in escrow, and then I'm going to probably make another offer tomorrow.
Yeah.
And these are in Orange County, and these are all close to $1 million, right? But I know enough that I can kind of make those decisions.
Yeah. So when you're partnering up with somebody, can you give any advice there on how to find that partner, what value you can bring that partner, how to pitch yourself, especially as a newbie trying to do that first deal?
Yeah, so there's this triangle. I've heard it somewhere. Is there's three corners, right, to a triangle? If you have people, you have money, you have deal, right? You need at least to have two. You could have one, but you need, if you have two, you can always find the other. If you have money and the deal, you can find the people, the realtors and stuff. If you have the people and the deal, you can find the money, right? So I
Mhm.
would say, what are you bringing to the table, right? So, like, let's say, for example, you haven't done any deal, and then you say, hey, man, I can help you close on this deal by bringing capital. That's value for me, right? Because I don't have to go and raise capital. But if you say I'm going to help you find a contractor, I'm like, what do you know about contractors? If you don't know anything, then that's not of value to me. So you just want to partner with someone who has another skill set or some value, and then you can bring the others, and then you can go in together. That's how I did my first deal, right?
Yeah.
Because I was more confident.
Yeah, I love the triangle concept. I mean, for sure, the how to find the deal. We talk about that all the time on, from a deal machine perspective.
Yeah.
How to fund the deal. We definitely have people on talking about that. The people part of that. Can you break down what all what an ideal team is? Like, what are those? Who are those people you should be bringing to the table to provide the most value?
So, for example, let's say you partner with someone like me. It doesn't have to be me. It could be Neil Bauer, it could be Grant Cardone, it could be Kathy Fitke, it could be Matt Camp, right? So anybody could do the deal. So,
Hmm.
so what are you, or am I bringing to the table? Let's say you bought the money, right? So I have to have the team. I have to find the deal, right? So what's in the team? The team consists of realtors. You need to have mortgage brokers. You need to know how to negotiate, right? You need to know how to talk to them. You need to have contractors. You need to have property management. You need a handyman. All of these things, and it's a system. Like, you need to have a system to be very confident. You need to know how much it will cost to go in and rehab the spot. What's your turnaround? Are you going to take 3 years to do this because your dad can do it on weekends? Like, no, it's a waste of time. Like, I'm going to pay more money to get this done in 2 weeks, because everything costs money, right? So once you buy the property, you got to pay property taxes, insurance, the principal, interest, all of those things. So they all add up. So you need to have the system. So you bring all of the system, and you keep a portion of the deal.
Love it. What
Yeah.
what about that the funding, the money part of that triangle? I know you obviously raise money from like family and friends, and even your first deal you had a few people coming in. Do you have any tips and strategies or lessons learned on raising money from family and friends, and fulfilling that money part of the deal?
Yeah, so if this is going to be your first deal, let's say, Matt, you're going to do your first deal tomorrow, and then if you call me and said, "Hey, I need 100 grand, I want to buy this $500,000 deal," and then I'm going to be like, "Okay, how many deals have you done?" And then you're like, "Oh, well, this is going to be my first deal." Then it's going to be a little bit difficult, but you
Hmm.
could call your sister or your mom, and they might give it to you because they trust you, right? They know that you're not going to run away with the money, right?
Hmm.
But usually, the first deal, I would say, try to do it with your own money. If you don't have the money, obviously get it from someone, but be very smart about it. When you take other people's money, you don't want to be like the FTX guys.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say it's yeah, we've seen some pretty crazy stuff the past week through a lot of that.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, I appreciate you breaking down each of those corners of the triangle as well. I know one thing with your background that I really thought was interesting as well, that you've spoken on before, is really how do you invest in other markets. So you have three markets that you guys are in right now, right? Or
Yeah, so
um,
I started off with Kern County Bakersfield, because that's away from the ocean, so it's a little bit cheaper. I could buy the doors for cheaper, right? I bought a triplex for 250, so what's that, like $70 a door?
mhm,
So um, $80 a door. So that's pretty good. But if I, then the challenges are, I don't want to spend a lot of time managing low numbers, right? It's not a good use of my time, right? So
mhm,
then I started moving to Inland Empire, which is closer, and then I started moving the money from Kern County, Bakersfield, to Inland Empire, which is like Mentone, is closer to the mountains, is
mhm.
nicer area, Fontana, all those cities, Riverside. So now I'm buying in Orange County this year. So I started buying in Orange County. So I have my home there. My home has an ADU. I could do short-term rental or medium-term rental. I have another one in Costa Mesa. Then I have a triplex in Santa Ana. So these things I'm buying now in Orange County, they're really nice, right? So you want to start where you can afford, right? and then you got to slowly,
Level
work
up.
yourself up.
Yeah.
When I was buying this, stuff in Kern County, people were like laughing at me like 4 years ago. They're like, "Bro, why would you do that? I want to buy a home in Orange County. I'm gonna save." But the interesting thing, like we were talking about the money supply and stuff, is like the world is now constructed, Matt, in such a way that you cannot save anymore. Like, Robert Kiyosaki wrote this book, Savers or Losers. He's not calling you a loser. He's just saying that the way the world works now is you cannot save money anymore. You have to invest just to stay par or move ahead in life, right?
Mhm.
So I knew 4 years ago that I cannot afford to buy $1 million home that I live in right now, 4 years ago, because I would never save $250,000 working a job. Like, that's not possible, right? But I know I could buy a $250,000 place that could go up in value, right? So that's what I did. I am playing the same game the feds and the governments are playing. I just played it on a level that I can.
Yeah.
So when the inflation goes up, it's going to take the value of my property up, right? So it doesn't matter how much money you put down, right? So I'm controlling, let's say, $1 million of assets, and it goes up by 5%. Now I'm making 50 grand a year. But if I only had the 50 grand and then I just save it, it's okay. I could get maybe 500 bucks, probably not even, right? So I have 50,500, right? But because I put the 50 grand in an asset, now that asset has gone up by 50 grand. So I just made 100% on the money,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
So that's the way you could do it, because you have to play this game. It's like people are like, "Oh, I'm afraid of doing this. It's a risk." I usually joke with people saying that the worst case scenario for you is you today. That is the worst case scenario, because you don't have anything, right? So it's like regular people, they always worry to do the deal. But the worst case scenario is you. Like, you already don't have anything. So it's like if you bought the home and lost it, you're just back to you.
Yeah. Right where you are already. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, so what's the problem? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. That's a great way of thinking about it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people, I mean, I feel like, a lot of times can be analysis paralysis. There's just so
Sure.
much information out there. Even this, like we're trying to educate people and inspire them to take action and get out there. But at a certain point, you can't have that limiting belief of feeling like you need to know everything. You got to go out and take action because, like you said, you're already at that baseline. Like you're the worst is you're gonna be back to where you were. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, awesome, man. This has been fantastic. Can you tell our audience like what's the best way to connect with you and everything that you've got going on? I know you're doing quite a few things here as well. So
Yeah, the best way to connect is, listen to your podcast. But I also have a podcast. It's called
yeah,
the RE Social Podcast. That's I talk to people who are smarter than me, and put it out there for people. I have a RE Social meetup in Orange County every month. We do it on Mondays. Or you can hit me up on Instagram. It's Anvi Invest, ANVI Invest.
perfect, man. Yeah, I know. We'll have some free resources linked under here as well, but then we'll link to the RE Social podcast and everything you've mentioned there. So, Vince, really appreciate your time. Thanks again. This was fantastic. So.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and to everyone watching, this is Matt Camp with Deal Machine, and happy deal finding.